Previously on Talking with My Hans, I've been alluding to the fact that I've been working through a couple of different books and that one of them was bound to make its way onto the Talking with My Hans book review club. I can proudly say that I have finished exactly one of those books. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that that book is Darth Plagueis by James Luceno. Now, this is not the first Star Wars book that James Luceno has ever written, nor is it the first Star Wars book that I have ever read by James Luceno. However, many fans regard this book as his absolute finest work. This will be very much a spoiler review, considering this book came out in 2008 and appropriately has the Legends banner slapped across the top. But here's what I'll say. If you watch my Han Solo video about headcanons, you'll know that this book, even though it's Legends, is still considered by many fans to be a large piece of their own headcanon. So what did I think of Darth Plagueis by James Luceno? Would I recommend this book? Was it worth all the time that I spent reading it? Well, that's why you clicked on the video, so let's find out. Let me first say right off the bat, I can tell why this novel is one of the best in the eyes of so many fans. It's insanely rich, and it's just dripping in Star Wars lore. James Luceno really knows his stuff, and this book is very evident of that. In fact, I noticed as much when I read his canon contribution to the franchise, Tarkin. Both books do an amazing job of being neck-deep in both obscure and mainstream lore. So, what's it about? Well, in short, this book outlines Darth Plagueis' time as Darth Sidious's master. We see Plagueis kill his own master, Darth Tenebrous, at the beginning of the book, and then continue to fulfill his alter ego as Higo Damask, a relatively invisible force in the galaxy and the leader of a cult that is, well, essentially the Freemasons of the Star Wars universe. Plagueis discovers a young Palpatine on Naboo, and the two become close enough that Damask reveals himself, and the two begin a master and apprentice partnership that Plagueis sees as powerful enough to take over the entire galaxy. Plagueis is obsessed with finding ways to meddle with the midichlorians and living beings that he captures or kills, and throughout the book he's always trying to achieve his ultimate goal of sustaining his own life through influencing midichlorians themselves. If you've seen this scene...
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis The Wise?
You know that ultimately he does succeed, but not until after his life is nearly cut short in an assassination attempt. Plagueis and Sidious slowly etch away at their grand plan to ultimately rule the galaxy as co-chancellors, and you begin to see some of the moments in history that lead up to the Naboo conflict. Again, if you've seen this scene...
I thought not. It's not a story the Jedi would tell you.
You'll know that the story does not end well for Plagueis. I bought the paperback version of this fine novel, and it didn't cost me more than $10. And for the money, you get roughly 470-ish pages of quality Star Wars content. But there were some things that I didn't entirely like about the book. The first is that this book is a really long journey. Sometimes it feels way too long to get to the point that Luceno is trying to make. Like I said, it's a long story, but it really didn't need to be as long as it was. The other thing about Darth Plagueis that I really couldn't get behind was how dense some of the chapters were. Have you ever had those days where you're reading something and you were seeing the words on the page, but nothing was really entering your brain? Like all the material was just going right over your head? There are some chapters where Plagueis is in his lab and he's trying to unlock the secrets of midichlorians and goes off on long scientific riffs about how midichlorians work and their relation to the Force, and my mind just shuts off. Stuff like this would go on page after page after page, and I guess some people are really into that sort of explanation, but when I read through those scenes, they just didn't stack up at all against some of the other really amazing action sequences or the political wheeling and dealing. The last negative thing I'll say about this book is that it requires an extreme level of Star Wars knowledge to comprehend. Not just any Star Wars fan can pick this up and enjoy all it has to offer. This book requires a Star Wars bachelor's degree at least. Only a Star Wars master's or doctorate will grant you the full enjoyment of this novel. Nevertheless, there are so many great things about this book that this review could probably extend well beyond most of your attention spans, so I'll just give you the best of Darth Plagueis. So let me start with the opposite of the last point I made. If you are a Star Wars doctorate,
or master's degree holder, you will find that this book is the ultimate culmination of every piece of Legends material pre-Episode 1 in existence. End of story. Luceno leaves no stone unturned and somehow crams as many references to ancient Sith as he can. That's a lot of fun. This book is also a complete shift in tone from most of the Star Wars books that I have read personally. The dark nature of this book is surprisingly refreshing, and I wouldn't mind having more books like this in canon. James Luceno has done a good job in the 2 books of his that I've read in capturing the essence of evil characters in Star Wars. They're elegant and graceful, but also brutal and unforgiving. He absolutely nails everything about these 2 characters and leaves you wanting more even after they murder a bunch of people. This book also really shines during a few different types of scenes. Both the training scenes and the backdoor politicking were top notch. I found myself really sitting up straight and tuning in when Plagueis was training Sidious to become a Sith. The back and forth between the two and the places they were and the things they did all played as a complete opposite to Luke and Yoda from Empire Strikes Back. When Plagueis slips back into his alter ego of Hugo Damask and tools around with the galaxy through his shadow group perfectly mirrors the kind of politician Palpatine becomes in the movies. I didn't think I'd enjoy all the politics in this book, but I was definitely wrong. Every time the Senate or Damask Holdings is involved, the novel really shines. The last thing that makes this book a can't miss is its obvious impact on current Star Wars stories. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I pointed out a couple of parallels to the Star Wars sequel trilogy. There's a conversation between Plagueis and Palpatine that goes a lot like this conversation between Kylo and the reborn Sidious.
What could you give me?
Everything.
Ironically enough, there was even mentions to vat-grown clones in Plagueis' lab. What I didn't cover on Twitter was that I also wouldn't be surprised if Cavan Scott read this to prepare himself for writing Dooku, Jedi Lost. The Dooku in this book and the Dooku from Scott's audiobook are very similar. Needless to say, James Luceno's Darth Plagueis is one of my favorites, even though it's not considered canon. So what's the final verdict on this edition of the Talking with My Hans Book Review Club? If you can handle it, you need to read it. Get your hands on this book as soon as humanly possible. Star Wars fans past and present can all find something to like in this book. I would recommend this fine piece of literature to any fan that can handle it. Okay, until next time, I'll see you guys later.